My name is Graeme Smith, and I'm the author of The Dogs Are Eating Them Now, Our War in Afghanistan. As I was writing the book, I was actually quite worried that it would be old news, that things went terribly wrong in Afghanistan. I figure anyone who watches the evening news has already figured that out. So what I think I was trying to do was explain a little bit why it went badly. But also, right at the end, I leave kind of a glimmer of hope because, and that's a hard thing to explain. People say, well, you say that it was a debacle. And I say, yeah, it was a debacle. We tried to do this, peace and stability, and it's not less peaceful, it's less stable. It didn't work. But that's not to say that you can completely give up. Not only because everyone deserves peace and stability, but also because if you go into a place and you send in all these tens of thousands of troops and spend these billions and billions of dollars and you make a giant mess, you probably have a moral responsibility to clean it up. There is today a huge escalating war between the Afghan security forces and a rising insurgency. And Canada and the other nations involved in this project have a moral responsibility to make sure the Afghan forces can survive that fight. Nobody really knows why the Taliban are fighting, actually. It's hard to ask them, first of all. It's very dangerous. And when you do ask them, they don't necessarily tell you the truth. Or maybe they don't even themselves understand. So I tended not to emphasize the religious side of the war because I never saw religion as the central motivating factor for the Taliban. The Taliban today are locked in an escalating struggle with the Afghan government. The Afghan government calls itself the Islamic Republic of Afghanistan. The Taliban say they're fighting to bring in Sharia law, but Sharia already is the bedrock of the Afghan judicial system. So, I never really saw this as a particularly religiously motivated war. But we're going to find out in the next couple of years who's right and who's wrong about that, because there are some analysts who say that as the foreign troops leave, that the religious justification for the war evaporates, that the Taliban no longer feel as though they're fighting a jihad against foreign infidels. And so therefore you should start to see the violence decline. I actually disagree with that. I think that's insane. The Taliban are fighting for all kinds of local reasons. They're fighting in some places to take back what was lost. And so far the statistics don't bear out this idea that it's a religious war, because the violence is still rising even without the infidels there. I think one of the reasons to feel maybe a bit hopeful about the coming years is that just the overall level of madness might ebb as the foreigners leave. So things like host nation trucking contracts, which have been so spectacularly corrupt and have funneled money to the insurgency inadvertently. Those things will reduce in size, and so the ability of the insurgency to sort of leech off of this whole effort, that should slowly spin its way down. As the foreigners no longer, require so much diesel fuel for their operations, they won't have to pay bribes to keep the roads open, and so the local militias, the local warlords, the local insurgent groups that had been collecting tolls on those roads won't be able to collect so much money. They won't be able to buy as many bullets. Hopefully they won't be firing as many bullets. I open up the book. There's a passage in one of the early chapters where a British officer describes counter-narcotics strategy in the most optimistic way possible. And by the end of the book, as you sort of get through this arc of disappointment and chaos, you see that actually drugs are still the most important industry in southern Afghanistan. And it runs everything. And in the end, it was why I had to flee. I had been planning to leave anyways, but the door was firmly shut behind me when I accused a deputy minister, who is the boss of the counter-narcotics police of Afghanistan. I accused him of being a drug dealer. So he was at the same time the guy responsible for fighting drugs and also someone who was involved in the industry. And he got upset. He got so upset that he came to Kandahar looking for me. And I got a message from an intelligence officer telling me that it wasn't good for my health to stick around. And so I didn't go back. I stayed away for a couple of years. And as soon as he was killed, I went back. I went back about a week later, and just to sort of see how things were going. My new job is as a senior analyst for the International Crisis Group. Crisis Group is a really interesting think tank because they have offices scattered all over the world in all of these far-flung war zones. And they pay people like me to do incredibly nerdy policy work, to spend 6 months researching what's going on and write an absurdly long document full of footnotes. And these documents are mostly used by governments, by militaries, to try to fix what's wrong. We make recommendations about what they should be doing, and that was a real challenge. I mean, that's a real shift in footing for a journalist like me, because in the book I am describing all the stuff that's messed up, and now I'm being asked, so, Mr. Smith, what do you do about it? And that's hard. But I wanted that challenge.